A live video again, live from Holland, Haarlem. Well, I hope you're all going to enjoy this. I hope I do. Anyway, so I've been traveling all around and talking to lots of people, teaching here and there, teaching in Paris next week. So it'll be exciting. And after that, here in Holland, and then I'm off to Japan with a group of people. So that will be exciting. Anyway, so talking about Japan, we're going to visit, of course, Mount Kurama and Mount Hiei and lots of other wonderful places. But I want to talk about Mikao Usui today. So there is not much known about the man, in written information. So there is no written information by Mikao Usui himself, as far as we know. Maybe it is there, but at the moment it's not available. So, we have to rely on Hayashi, Mrs. Takada, and all sorts of other teachers and information. Reiki, Gakkai. But what is really interesting? Someone the other day said, well, we don't know much about Mikao Usui, but we know some things, don't we? And I think this particular one thing is really, really important, and I think is so often not talked about within the system of Reiki by teachers, by practitioners, and it is one really, really, really important aspect what I'm going to talk about today. So what is that really important aspect? Is that Mikao Usui sat on Mount Kurama for 21 days. So this is written about on his memorial stone. These 21-day specific meditation practices are still done in Japan today by people who practice Japanese esoteric teachings. Very, very difficult. So before you can do the 21-day, you have to have done the 7-day practice. And before you can do that, you have done the 3-day practice. And before you can do those, you have to have a prior training. So also on Mikao Usui's gravesite, we can see that he practiced a very difficult practice. He was a really dedicated practitioner. So he sat on Mount Kurama for 21 days. And why? Why? It is said that one of his teachers said, you have to die once. Now, it's not a physical dying, it's the dying of the ego, right? And it's a very common theme in Japan as a spiritual practitioner. It's about the death of the ego, not the physical dying. Physical dying is something quite different. However, there's a similarity in it. Of course, we go through the same death process, except while we're living. And so here is the really important element. Mikao Usui went to Mount Kurama to do this 21-day practice to really experience this kind of death, not the physical dying, but the dying of the ego. So these kind of practices in Japan are very difficult. What do? You do lots of chanting, lots of meditation practices, lots of inwards, lots of visualizations to really help you to strip away all these layers so that we can drop away and your bright light shines again. And Mikao Usui pointed this bright light out in the Reiki 3 symbol and mantra. Hiroshi Doi, one wonderful researcher and Japanese Reiki teacher, he said that he once got a little booklet from a student of Mikao Usui. He had to look in it. And this particular student of Mikao Usui was called to Mikao Usui's little space and shown the Reiki 3 symbol and mantra. And that stands really for your inner great bright light. What is that inner great bright light? It's stripped away of all the ego, all these layers. So your true self, your essence. Now what is really interesting is that Mikao Usui practiced these 21-day practices on Mount Kurama. And after he had done that, he walked down to the mountain, and the story goes that he suddenly realized that you could heal with your hands, right? Now here, this is a really important element. So keep tuned, everybody. I could say till next time, but I don't. But here's a really important element. He wasn't practicing, therefore, hands-on healing on Mount Kurama, right? He was discovering that after his enlightened experience, he could perform hands-on healing. Now, this is a really important element. If you really think about it, means that he only started to teach hands-on healing after his enlightened experience. Now, hands-on healing is our birthright, right? We all can do it. No matter if we received an attunement or not, or reiju or initiation, whatever you call it, hands-on healing is our birthright. A little kid falls over, what do? Place their hand straight on their knee. A mother sees the kid fall over, place the hand straight on the knee. Help you. But we can, of course, increase this hands-on healing. How? By rediscovering our bright light. The more we lay bare that bright light, the more potential for hands-on healing there is. Makes perfect sense. So Mikao Usui therefore started to only teach hands-on healing and practice hands-on healing after he had this really direct experience of his own true bright light. But now, when we practice the system of Reiki, we first learn hands-on healing, and then hopefully we aim towards that bright light. But Mikao Usui did it the other way around. So that, for me, is a really important element, isn't it? It teaches us that if we want to tread in Mikao Usui's teachings, to really practice hands-on healing, we need to be like Mikao Usui. So, first, really, as much as we can, rediscover your great bright light. Now, as we already discovered in this talk, very simple, and the story is there that Mikao Usui realized he could do hands-on healing after his enlightened experience, not before. What means he wasn't practicing hands-on healing on Mount Karama, he practiced meditation, chanting, etc. Now, we can find these teachings back in how we formulated the system of Reiki. We see symbols, and these were traditionally internalized to remember your great bright light. We can see mantras. They were traditionally chanted over and over and over again to realize your great bright light. Practices like Joshin Kokyoho, internalized to rediscover your great bright light so that we could do hands-on healing. The precepts contemplated upon, chanted to realize that we could do hands-on healing, right? So if I want to practice the system of Reiki, as Mikao Usui kind of was doing himself, then there is the key. We might not know exactly how Mikao Usui practiced. We might not know what he really taught afterwards, because a lot of that is like Chinese whisper, lost in translation. I just saw this wonderful video about Japan, and this gentleman was asked how he could translate kami. And after a few explanations about kami, he said, actually, I don't translate the word kami. It's untranslatable for me. And that makes perfect sense. Because as soon as we translate something, sometimes, we get caught off. And we miss the whole point. So even if we translate the system of Reiki, sometimes we miss the whole point. So for me, really, I don't really want to practice Hayashi's Reiki because, hey, that was created by Hayashi. Hayashi has already changed many, many things in the system of Reiki, according, for example, to Reiki researchers Hiroshi Doi. Then, of course, Mrs. Takada practiced with Hayashi, so there's also already change. So it's kind of change. I could happily follow Mrs. Takada's teachings. I can happily follow Hayashi's teachings. I could happily follow anybody's teachings. Great. Of course, again, we don't know really what Mikao Usui was teaching because that is kind of lost in a way. However, we have these elements. We have precepts, meditation, symbols and mantras, reiju, and the precepts. So when we look at all these elements together, then we can say, okay, if I start to practice them like Mikao Usui practiced these teachings on Mount Karama as an internalized practice, then I can chant the precepts for a prolonged period of time, maybe 45 minutes, maybe the whole day, maybe 8 sessions of 45 minutes, if I want to be like Mikao Usui, right? If I want to practice a system what is based on Mikao Usui, I have to look at Mikao Usui, not Hayashi, not any teachers who came after that. Right? And as we already discovered now, that Usui only started to practice hands-on healing after he had this enlightened experience, not before. So it means he wasn't sitting on Mount Karama doing like this. Yeah? And as we said already, hands-on healing is our birthright. It's a birthright of who we are, but of course we can increase it. So how can we increase it? Focus on the precepts, really internalize them. Chant them. Chant the mantras, internalize them. Internalize the symbols, really rediscovering who you truly are. Internalize Reiki of your practice. See it as a spiritual development, as a spiritual blessing for yourself. Work with meditation practices like Joshin Kokuyo. Again, internalizing, grounding, expanding, contraction and expanding. All of these practices, if you look at these teachings, what Mikao Usui left us, precepts, hands-on healing, meditation, symbols and mantras, Reiki, we can see the heritage of his esoteric practices. And so, therefore, really important to realize. You have to ask yourself, do you want to practice like Hayashi? Do you want to practice like your teacher? Yes, that is wonderful. However, if I really want to be in the footsteps of Mikao Usui, then don't follow the footsteps. Practice and aim for what he wanted to aim. What was that? He didn't sit on Mount Karama to realize, I want to practice hands-on healing, right? No, his intent was that he wanted to rediscover his true self, that he was Reiki. And nowadays, a lot of people say, oh, we're just going to be Reiki. But man, that is so difficult. I hear it so often, people go like, oh yeah, just let's be Reiki. But this is difficult. Being Reiki is not being distracted by past, present, future. Or in other words, have had the experience what Mikao Usui had on Mount Karama. As we all know, that is very difficult. So therefore, the system of Reiki is a lifelong practice. Grinding away, keep practicing, keep chanting, keep meditating, keep internalizing, keep contemplating on the precepts and all of these other teachings, then we really know what Mikao Usui was pointing out. What was he pointing out? His true self, his inner great bright light. This pointers throughout the whole system about this. So, for example, if you really think about it, do not anger, do not worry, be grateful, be true to your way and your being, and show compassion to yourself and others. That is a description of the great bright light, right? So he's pointing in the precepts already, the bright light. There is in the precepts no mention about hands-on healing. There's no mention about any physical illness. Why? Because for Mikao Usui, the essence of the system of Reiki was the precepts, right? This is why he sat on Mount Karama. This is so important. And, you know, it's very interesting that not many people think about it or teach this, because hands-on healing is the basis, is a really basis element. So for me, really, hands-on healing is great if we start with that. And hopefully, we do it the other way as Mikao Usui. Hopefully, by practicing hands-on healing, we then get the inclination to say, hey, I want to rediscover my great bright light. But just through hands-on healing, that is very, very, very difficult, particularly if we see hands-on healing as something external, or if we see that energy of Reiki something as external. Okay. So Hiroshi Doi points this out too. He says that in the Usui Reiki Gakkai, when Mikao Usui was alive, he would train his students very deeply into Shinparan and into Ansin Ritsume, enlightenment. And that after Mikao Usui died, no one took his place to teach that. So all of that has disappeared, right? However, we don't need to know how he exactly did that because the tools are already there. All we need to do is sit on our butt and do the practice. And this is really where the difference lays like. We can intellectualize all his teachings, but where the difference really lies, and how often do you sit on your butt in your daily practice, internalizing the precepts, the meditations, the symbols and mantras, the Reiki, and then finally the hands-on healing. And that, for me, is Mikao Usui's teachings. So if we say we practice Mikao Usui's teachings, then we have to think about it. What do we practice? Hands-on healing? Or, as Mikao Usui did himself, he went to Mount Karama and said, hey, I want to have this direct experience of this death. Not the physical death, not the death of the ego, so that we can shine that bright light. And that bright light is compassion, kindness, joy, gratefulness, no anger, no worry, being true to your way and your being. And that in itself is healing. A tremendous amount of healing takes place if you let go of your anger and worry. Think about it. If you're worried the whole day and angry the whole day, do you feel tired at the end of the day? Of course you do, right? You feel extremely tired. So therefore, you're losing your energy. You're expanding your energy in worry and anger. So if you do a treatment, no energy left. But if you preserve that and have no anger and worry, and of course, I hear a lot of people, oh, I don't anger and don't worry. But we really have to investigate that. There's also very subtle levels of our worry and anger. And what is the biggest worry? Mikao Usui also pointed out, the death. His death experience is the most profound element of letting go of our biggest worry, our biggest fear is death, right? All of that is already there. So sometimes some people say, oh, we don't know what Mikao Usui really taught. No, we don't know, but we have traces, precepts, meditations, symbols and mantras, Reiki, hands-on healing. And we have that he went to sit on Mount Karama to meditate for 21 days, to realize his great bright light. And after realizing the great bright light, he rediscovered that a side effect of that was hands-on healing. Right? Really, again, think about it. If you lay bare your true self, your inner great bright light, will there be a difference in your hands-on healing or not? Of course. It's very common sense. So, investigate for yourself. What would you want to practice? System of Reiki according to some teachers, or the system of Reiki according to Mikao Usui. Again, we don't know exactly what Mikao Usui taught at that time. Again, according to Hiroshi Doi, wonderful teacher in Japan, wonderful researcher, Mikao Usui was teaching his students according to their spiritual awakening. What means that he would have taught different people different things. And this is, I think, where he taught some people just a basic form of hands-on healing. Voila. Not that difficult. All right? And some of his students, he might have taught a very deep practice to have that direct experience of Ansin Rutsume, their own inner great bright light. And of course, if we want to practice the system of Reiki, we have to have a clear intent. So what is your intent? Is your intent to just heal your knee? To just do some hands-on healing? To have a job as a hands-on healer? To teach Reiki as a job? Or is your intent to actually rediscover your great bright light? A different intent creates a different outcome. And if we couple intent with practice, then we also have a very different outcome. So therefore, check your intent. In a way, the best intent, if I want to practice Mikao Usui's teaching, would be, I want to reach enlightenment. Show compassion for yourself. An enlightened experience, right? It's the most compassionate thing you can do for yourself. And show compassion to others. What is that most compassionate thing to others? Helping them to rediscover their own inner great bright light. So again, we can see lots of these pointers in Mikao Usui's teachings. And I cannot do hands-on healing on everybody, right? If I walk into the street, I can't go like this. Impossible. But if I walk in that great bright light of no anger, no worry, no fear, being grateful, being true to my way and my being, and being compassionate, what happens? Automatically, it will affect the people I come in contact with in my daily life. We don't need to use our hands to be healing. And we're not healing anybody. Healing is becoming whole, right? This is another very important element. Anyway, I've talked enough for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you can contemplate this and see and check for yourself. What do you want to practice? Mikao Usui's teachings? What is your intent while you're practicing it? And do you couple it with certain practices to follow your intent? If I have the intent to get toothpaste, and I don't follow it with putting on my shoes, my jacket, and walk to the shop, then I never get the toothpaste. So couple your intent with applied practices. And this is why sitting on our butt is so important. If we want to tread and be in the same space as Mikao Usui, that inner great bright light. I hope you all enjoyed this speech for today. Anyway, have a lovely weekend, and I see you next time. Bye.